Hey, thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name's Olivia and I'm a gender affirming voice teacher. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about goals. Now, when we talk about vocal modification, that goal can feel really big. It can feel like far off in the distance. So it's important to have ways to kind of break that larger goal up into smaller pieces and for you to really feel like you are making progress along the way. So when you're working on things day to day, it's kind of hard to tell if you're making progress because day to day, when you're putting in that work of practice, you might not see a huge payoff from your practice yesterday to your practice today. But over the course of weeks and months, you're able to really hear that progress. So today I'm going to talk about a framework called SMART, which is an acronym, that can help you kind of narrow down your goals, can help you recognize when you're making progress, and also help you stay motivated along the way. So without further ado, let's get started. The concept of SMART was introduced or created by a guy named George T. Duran in 1981. He worked at the Washington Water Power Company, the great Washington Water Power Company, as a consultant and a director of corporate planning. He wrote a paper called There's a Smart Way to Write Management's Goals and Objectives. And in it, he introduces this acronym SMART and how it can help to ensure success and reach goals. So even though this was designed for kind of a corporate setting, I think it's a really great way to look at goal setting. So we're going to talk about how we can apply that to voice training. S stands for specific. So in voice training, whether you're working on vocal feminization, vocal masculinization, anything in between and beyond, that can be a pretty broad goal to start with. So if you go into training saying, okay, I want a more feminine perceived voice, that is great. And having that big overarching goal is fabulous. But as you start to get into voice training, it's awesome to be able to narrow in on some of the different elements and decide within those elements what kind of works for you. So you might look, let's say you're working on vocal feminization and you're learning about the different elements and you realize, what? I think vocal weight is the thing that I really want to target. So I'm going to make that a specific goal for myself that by, next week at my next lesson, I'm going to have a better understanding of my vocal weight. So narrowing down these smaller elements can be really helpful because they can help you fine-tune your voice. If you're thinking, I just want it to be more feminine, it can be paralyzing. It's like, okay, well, where do I begin? But if you get into the nitty-gritty of it, learn about these different elements of the voice, then you can pick some of those things out and focus on them. When you figure out, oh, that's actually a thing that I really like. I like that sound when it's like this. So I'm gonna make a specific goal around that specific element. M stands for measurable. Now, voice training can be challenging when it comes to measuring things. So, if you're in sales or something and you're like, okay, I want to sell this many t-shirts by the end of the year or something, you can count that. You can know exactly, what that measurement is. But with voice training, it can be a little bit more nebulous. Your voice might feel different day to day. You might have a tired voice one day, a slightly dehydrated voice one day it might feel great. So there's variables within your body that are going to be shifting all the time. And additionally, when it comes to the different elements that we work on with voice training, there's not always a perfect way to measure them. Now, obviously we can measure pitch. That's an element that we can, look at our Voice Tools app and check out what was our average pitch, or am I higher or lower than I usually am? That's a great way to incorporate some measurement into your practice. But you can also get creative with how you measure the different elements in your voice. For instance, you could develop like a scoring system for yourself, like where you're like, okay, I'm gonna make my system from 1 to 10. 10 is I like my resonance. 0 is I don't like it at all, or it's super bright versus dark. So you could listen to a recording back and say, okay, where do I think my resonance is on a scale of 1 to 10, being bright and dark? Maybe like a 6. So then maybe you do a recording a couple days later and you try that again. I think it's more like a 7. I like that, where that's going. I'm gonna keep working on that. So you can develop some scales and some measurements for yourself to help you kind of guide your ear, because really you want to be training your ear. A stands for achievable. So let's go back to this idea of voice training, kind of being this big goal, this overarching goal that sometimes can feel overwhelming. So when tasks and goals feel overwhelming, it's easy to just kind of throw in the towel, to just quit, because you might feel like, well, what's the point of doing this if it's just such a huge mountain to climb? I'm never going to get there. So making sure that the goals that you're putting in place for yourself are achievable. So going into, let's say you're going into lessons or something, being realistic about how long it takes to make these shifts in your voice. You're dealing with habits that you've built up over the course of your entire life. So if you're coming into voice training like, okay, great, thank you so much, I'd like to have my version of a perfect voice by next week. That's probably not going to be realistic or achievable for you. I think it's also important to be realistic about how much time that you're able to devote to practice, or how much emotional or mental energy that you have to devote to this as well. So if you're going through a really emotional time for one reason or another, maybe it's not the time to be kind of putting this extra thing on your plate. So working with a teacher like myself can be helpful if you're kind of struggling with creating realistic goals for yourself. I think it can be helpful for a teacher to say, you know what, where you are is right on track. Even if it might not be like as fast of a change as you were anticipating, to kind of get that feedback. And the more comfortable you get with that, the more you're gonna kind of know yourself, know your voice, and know how long it will take you to achieve smaller goals. R stands for relevant. So as you go into this process, it's important to kind of know what it means to you. Why are you doing this, and what benefit will voice training have for you? So you can ask yourself questions like, what will having a more feminine or masculine or androgynous sounding voice, what will this do for how you feel about yourself? You could ask yourself, how will voice training change how I feel when I meet someone new? Or you can ask yourself, how will this change my work life? How will this change how I can show up at work? Or, will this change my confidence at work? Things like that. So to kind of, put yourself in the future in a way and say, when I reach this goal, I know that things in my life will be different. I know that, this is meaningful to me because of X, Y, Z. So to have that kind of in your mind can really be helpful in making sure you stay motivated and stay on track along the way. And T stands for time bound. So I don't know about you, but quite frankly, I need a deadline to get things done, okay? So whether that's a self-imposed deadline or an external deadline, either one can really help me, work toward that date. Now, that can be challenging when you're working on voice training because you're not sure exactly how long things are going to take. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. There's no prescriptive way to go through this process. However, creating time-based goals can be helpful in achieving those smaller milestones along the way. So you could think, I'd like to be using my voice full-time within 6 months or within a year, or whatever your goal is. And you can, as you hit those smaller achievable goals, those, smaller different elements along the way, you can then start to adjust your bigger goal and say, you know what, even though I was saying, a year, I actually think I'm going to be able to kind of get there in 10 months. Or maybe, I thought it was going to be 6 months, but given the way my life is, I'm going to be realistic about how much time I'm actually able to devote. So I think it's going to be more like 9 months or 12 months. So you can always, these things are always flexible, but just putting some of these things in place can help you, meet goals. But then also, if you don't meet the goal, that's a learning experience. That's like, okay, you know what? I need more time to work on this. And I'm going to adjust some things in order to make sure that I can improve in this area. I hope this video has been helpful for you. I hope it's just given you like kind of a new way to think about setting goals and how to adjust if you need to. And know that if you haven't quite found a way to, stay motivated or stay on track, that's okay. Like it doesn't mean anything about you personally. It just means that you haven't found the thing that works for you, or it hasn't quite been the right time for you. That's okay. So if you are interested in taking a lesson for, accountability to kind of keep you motivated along the way, I have a link down in the description. If you'd like to click the link there and take a consultation. And I also have group classes that you can sign up for as well. So again, I hope this was helpful, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video.